I've had a memory since childhood of playing in a place we often used to visit and crawling into a cave that had been nearly filled with sand and litter, that had a black sooty ceiling with a crawl space that went way back further than I could see. Over the years I've visited this site many times with my daughter, and we've explored the same places I did as a child, but there was no sign of what I could see in my memory. In 2016 I had an accident that revealed a brain tumour that had been there since childhood. And after the accident I wasn't sure if the memory of the cave was real or imagined, and I put it down to my overactive child's mind and forgot about it. Then last year I visited my mum and took the dog for a wander around the site and stopped to rest on a stone. And when I looked down, the dog was half in a hole under the rock next to me. I didn't give it much thought at the time, but it nagged at me. So this year we went back with a camera on a pole and we found it. The site has a lot of history back to the Mesolithic, and I don't know if it's been recorded or if anyone else knows it's there. I'm not a historian or a filmmaker or a plagiarist. I've just done my best to put this together to show you what I've found and to give you some context to the site and to signpost you to the websites and the organisations that have the full history about the site, and to share a few of my ponderments about its possible origins and a few aspects of the site that don't make sense to me. Heysham Head is a rocky headland in Heysham village at the south end of Morecambe Bay in Lancashire. There is evidence of manufacture and trade since the Mesolithic, and it is also a site of very early Christian worship. If you visit the site today, you will find a small chapel on the headland called St Patrick's, with stone graves carved from the bedrock around it that is dated to the 7th century, and close by is a later Anglo-Saxon Viking era church, St Peter's, which also has a long recorded natural spring that some have referred to as a holy well. The site is also a crucial link with uncovering the gunpowder plot, and it is also a little known contender as the site of the Battle of Brunneber in 937 AD, and I believe there is also a much earlier third place of worship on the site, but more about this a little later. This is what the signage has to say about St Patrick's and St Peter's. St Patrick's Chapel originated as a small single room building constructed during the 8th century. It is likely the chapel was built to provide a place of rest for people visiting the rock-cut graves, which are thought to have attracted early Christian pilgrims. The chapel was enlarged after the 10th century and appears to have become a focus for burial, with over 80 individuals buried within a small adjacent cemetery. St Peter's Church is thought to have similar 8th century origins as the chapel, and despite numerous phases of rebuilding retains fragments of Anglo-Saxon masonry, including the blocked entrance on its western side. St Peter's also has several old and interesting stones and crosses that are dated as Viking Anglo-Saxon era, and it has a rare hogback stone that once stood in the churchyard. It was moved inside the church for preservation and can be viewed when the church is open. The woods and old rectory gardens. This is often overlooked by most visitors and holds what I think are some tantalising clues and perhaps some secrets still to be revealed to what this part of the site was used for and by who. Before I get to my childhood and what I have found, here is a brief history about the site. Please go to heyshamheritage.org for the full history of the village. The site has evidence of occupation since the Mesolithic. It is thought the chapel and the graves were built around 700 AD. The Vikings came a little later and left their mark all the way up the Lune Valley. Since Doomsday, the land was in the ownership of nobility and has had a hall or residence on it of some form since then. In the late 18th century it became an exclusive spa and health retreat, with an archery club that is still going strong today. The John O'Gaunt's Bowman is one of the oldest archery clubs in the UK and still meet at the Vale of Lune in Lancaster. During the Second World War it was a military camp, and after the war returned to being a holiday camp. Thank you Catherine Gregson from Heysham Heritage for sharing your childhood memories. Here's a small snippet from them. Please go to My Gem Films on YouTube for a full interview.
At Heysham in this rose garden there, they had a stage at the bottom of the rose garden, and they had concert parties. Every Sunday they had a band.
And then perched along the cliffs opposite the chalets was the 100-mile-an-hour-plus international karting circuit that was home and annual host to one of the biggest international karting events. Alan Dove at Karting One has done a fantastic film about how this sleepy little village became a date on the international racing calendar. It's an amazing story of one man's persistence and conviction. Please give it a watch.
I don't think this is a stretch to say, but I mean, it would take some vision, some sort of special person to look at the site that I'm standing in now and think, this is the ideal site for a international gearbox kart race.
The All-Star International lineup includes champions from Sweden, Denmark, Holland, South Africa, Australia and Ireland. And somewhere out there is the current world champion Reg Gage of Worcester Park, and ex-champion Kelvin Hesketh of Morecambe.
The stockade. I had no idea or inclination over the years that any structures were on the edge of the headland opposite the rock graves, until I watched Caroline Swan's in-depth presentation about the site for Ealing District Archaeological Society. There is a painting in the presentation by William Daniel around 1820 that shows a continuous wall running from the rock graves across to the opposite headland to a castellated stockade. Was this something built and long forgotten for the Napoleonic Wars, or was it perhaps an embellished afterthought by the artist? On the rock foreshore there is an ancient carving of a labyrinth similar to those found at Newgrange. There is a post on megalithic portal that shows the location of them. Poet, philosopher and failure. The gravestone of Sarah Hannah Jones carries this odd epitaph from her husband James, and has had many people pondering its meaning. There is a section about it on Heysham Heritage website. There is also a long recorded freshwater spring in the village near St Peter's that some have referred to as a holy well. Around 1860, the rector John Royds carried out some excavations and renovations at the site, and is probably the Royds in the Latin inscription in the wall at the back of the sunken path at the rear of St Patrick's Chapel. In 1903, consolidation work was carried out on the structure. This is possibly when the back wall was stabilised with concrete. In 1977, an excavation took place in and to the south of the chapel, which dated the site to the late 6th or early 7th century. The earliest date obtained from the burials excavated around the chapel was the 10th century-ish. In 1992, a dig was conducted on a very small section of the Barrows, which surprisingly uncovered over 1,200 artefacts from stone and flint tool-making industry. The nearest source of flint is reported to be 150 kilometres to the southeast. In 1999, Lancaster University conducted a survey of the old rectory gardens, and in 2017, Durham University conducted a geophysical survey of them too. I can't find a reference to the cave I crawled into as a child in any of the published reports and surveys I've found so far. I find it hard to believe that at some point it hasn't been recorded or noted by someone. Perhaps there are more recent studies that have recorded it and it's work in progress and not been published yet, or I could have just been looking in the wrong places, and there's every chance I missed something. But there is a chance it's been missed, and in fairness it's taken me 45 years to find the cave again, and if it wasn't for the dog's curiosity I might not have found it.